Greetings. Welcome to the Asana Kitchen podcast. I'm David Garrigues. And before we get started, just want to tell you I have a new upcoming online course, a new book, and a new app. Okay, and they're all related. Okay, so the book is called Teaching Yoga with Verbal Cues, and the app is a version of the book. And so it's got technical and magical verbal cues for each pose in the primary series. Okay, and so in the on the app, there's a language component, an audio. So I give two different versions, a kind of shorter, abbreviated, and then a more in-depth version of each posture. Okay, and so those are available worldwide. Well, one is the app is a download, but the book itself, you can order it through my website or through Amazon all over the world. Okay, and then the course, it's about the combination between physical adjustments and verbal adjustments. It's 4 Saturdays in a row starting August 28th. Okay, and it meets for 4 hours, and you can do it live or with the recording. Okay, and so really hope you decide to join me in that course. And the podcast that I'm going to give today is very related to the course, the book, and the app. Today's topic is adjustments. Okay, and so just want to talk about that, give you a little setup first on the place of adjustments in Ashtanga. Okay, or even back up a tiny bit further and just summarize Ashtanga. Okay, so, because to me, Ashtanga is a near perfect yoga system, Hatha yoga system. Okay, so, and when you say it's called a system or a method, right? And its purpose is to teach the student how to use the Hatha yoga. Okay, and it's a very powerful method. And so what Hatha yoga is kind of open to discussion or interpretation, but I'm just going to tell you that it comprises 4 main things. Okay, and those are asana, pranayama, mudras, and samadhi. Okay, so that's what, if you trying to what is Hatha yoga? Well, it's a practice of postures, right? Like we all know, because we do Hatha yoga. And asanas are the most visible and the most, kind of the largest aspect. And then second is the breathing, okay, pranayama. And that becomes a little bit more subtle, a little less easy to grab onto, and yet it's a big part of Hatha yoga. Okay, and then third is mudras, which are energetic seals. And the most famous mudras are bandhas, the 3 bandhas, Mula, Uddiyana, and Jalandhara bandha. But there's all kinds of mudras in Hatha yoga, and those are even more subtle than the breathing. Okay, and third is samadhi, which is the 8th limb. It means absorption, and what we mean by Hatha yoga is it's meant to teach you to focus your mind. Okay, and it has all kinds of mind focusing devices. All right, and so when we say Ashtanga yoga is a system for learning Hatha yoga, that's what he says. It's teaching you asanas, it's teaching you breathing, pranayama, it's teaching you mudras, and it's teaching you about this focusing. And it's doing a magnificent job of it. Like, kind of if you think historically, throughout time and how Hatha yoga has been practiced and taught, and even in the present moment, it's just an amazing system. Okay, and I've devoted more than half of my life to it. I feel wholly, because I'm constantly in awe of the system. Okay, but with every system, see, I go by this saying: every system of knowledge is also a system of ignorance. Okay, and so there's always blind spots to the system, and this is partly what I want to address today, is that, the blind spot that I want to address is more in the interpretation of the system, like how Ashtanga is taught and practiced, and it's in regards to adjustments. Okay, so to me, there's three ways to adjust, and when I say adjust, I mean that both a self-adjustment, okay, so correcting or kind of honing in your own posture. Then there's adjusting somebody else, okay, like a teacher adjusting a student. All right, and there's three types. So one is physical. Okay, so you either and obviously the physical one is not as useful if you're self-adjusting, but you can lay hands on yourself and physically adjust yourself. So there's physical adjustments that especially when a teacher adjusts a student. Then there's verbal adjustments. Okay, and that's where you use your voice. You use language to make a change in your position, in something about your asana, in your foundation or your spinal position or something. Okay, and then the third is props. Okay, so you can adjust by bringing in some help, like a block or a wall or a table or a chair, or various things, right? Okay, and see, with Ashtanga, it's changing slowly, but the culture, or the prevailing culture of Ashtanga is that only physical adjustments are permissible. Okay, so when you go to MYSORE, you see on the wall silence. It's written everywhere, because nobody can talk in the room, so verbalizing the practice, verbalizing an adjustment is taboo. Can't do it. And if you do it, it's kind of tolerated, maybe. But it's certainly not singled out as an important, essential aspect of correcting or developing a pose, right? Okay, and then props. Ashtanga's famous for rejecting, making props not okay. Okay, and so to me, this is a big problem in Ashtanga. Big, far-reaching problem. And that when I started Ashtanga so many years back in 1993, right, this was much more the rigid rule. And now in 2021, it's starting to change, and there's plenty of pockets and teachers that are teaching with verbal cues and with props. But in the overall thrust of the system, it's still not accepted. Okay, and so And so, to me, this makes that beautiful system of Hatha yoga much more difficult to access. Okay, this crazy little rule where you can't talk and you can't use props, they supposed to really limit your possibility for extracting the benefits out of the practice. And and I just want to talk to you about this some, okay? And the thing is it's a funny aspect of Ashtanga, because I feel like, you see, in a pure yoga sense, the language is to be left behind, okay? Like that. The ultimate state of yoga is to be in the present moment and to basically leave language behind. It's kind of, it's to merge with the infinite, or kind of get into the flow of this eternal now, to the point where there's absolutely no distinction between the subject and the object. Okay, so the moment you put words to something, there's distance between you and that thing, right? So and Ashtanga it's a funny method because it's so hardcore, right? Especially compared to other styles. Like, it's just kind of daunting to people because it's so sort of gung-ho and full-on. And the whole idea of not talking, I feel that it's part of that gung-ho-ness. And it's as though, like, somehow you shouldn't need to talk, and that talking's on this lower level, which is true, yogically speaking. Like, and so it's funny to me because as over the years as a teacher and a practitioner, I've come to more and more verbalize the practice, and I've made an art out of the verbal instructions. And but it still doesn't change that when I practice, I'm always walking this line or having this juxtaposition between what I call like intuition. Okay, so, because really it's impossible to fully articulate the yoga. Okay, and so it's not even a goal. Like, and in fact, language itself, trying to attach language to even the most basic things that you do with your body is quite complicating and a great challenge, actually. And so in many ways, I prefer not to put language to what I do. Like when I'm in my body doing my yoga, language does not belong. Okay, so I get it. And in some ways, language is it's a crutch, or it's a checklist. It's kind of like, when I come out of my trance, I go through a kind of verbal checklist of safety things, of like, are these things happening? Like, am I using my legs and arms well in a way that optimally supports my spine? Is my pelvic positioning, is it forward? Is it neutral? Is it backwards? And where should it be? Like, right? It's more of like a sort of verification system. Okay, and I liken it to Alan Watts used to tell this story that was kind of where he was speaking about the limits of the rational mind, right? And because this is what we're talking about partly, it's like sort of rationality of yoga, like putting everything in language, versus the more Zen kind of intuitive, just that you kind of grok the whole thing and do it. And this is how Ashtangis have operated, in the kind of, you just grok the whole thing and do it. And so he says, he takes the example of the centipede. So a centipede has 100 legs, right? We have 2, and we have a time of it just negotiating our 2 legs, right? But imagine if you had 100 legs that you had to coordinate, right? Walking around. And the centipede is very nimble, right? Very swift and agile. And then, but Alan Watts, he says, if you asked him, if you were like stopped and you said, hey, buddy, how do you do that anyway? How do you walk on 100 legs? And so, and the centipede, if he starts going, he starts describing it. Well, let's see. So this first leg, I've got to put that one, and then the second leg has to come behind, right? Like all of a sudden he's tripping and he can't even walk, right? And so what I'm saying is I understand the problem of language, but there's some big differences between the centipede and the human being. And one is the centipede can't talk even if it wants to. Okay, but we can. And we've been given that equipment. Okay, and so it's very essential part of our equipment to be able to verbalize and talk and put words to our experience. Okay, and so those of you in the podcast land that are listening, I also have another group with me today that happened sort of spontaneously that's listening in, and their theme was supposed to be, somebody was supposed to give a talk, but I stepped in, but their theme was supposed to be about practicing during stressful times, okay? And to me, the ability to verbalize your practice, okay, is crucial for practicing during stressful times, okay? So that it's a very big deal to be able to put words to your experience, okay? And to me, it's a necessary evolution of yoga. Okay, so that yoga, if you do yoga to go into a trance and to kind of drop behind all like rational thought and get into the flow of now, and that's it. It just stops there with, I practice, I go through this catharsis, I do my shavasana, and I walk off. Okay, that to me is missing a gigantic part of the pie of the medicine, like the yoga medicine. And it's quite possible that in the past that was the ideal, okay? And that the idea of verbalizing, so, and by verbalizing, I mean verbalizing the actual actions of what you are doing, and to a very fine and precise degree, but also verbalizing your feelings, like how you feel about what you are doing, like what comes up for you, what are those fears, what are those insecurities, what are those feelings of failure, and the opposite. What are those joys? What are those moments of insight and inspiration that come to you? And so, to me, this is key, and it's very possible that it's modern. Okay, that it's like in the past, yoga was not seen that way. But I'm telling you that in now and going forward, it needs to be seen that way. And you need to see it that way if you want to grow and really have that technology serve you and get full command of it. You see, and it positively amazes me that the lineage, right? Who invented Ashtanga? Like it's more than one person is kind of responsible for it, right? But those originators are not alive anymore, okay? And they had no idea of the gold that was contained within what they made, right? That they loved what they made and they interpreted it in a certain way, but now it's time to interpret it, to go in there and find more gold. And that's why I say it's such an astounding Hatha yoga system, because it truly is set up to go in there and mine that the medicine. It has the ability to address the ailments, the sufferings of the human being in a major way, as a major component to a preventative medicine. You see, because what I'm talking about is it doesn't come from the outside. Okay? It's not a pill you take. It's not a surgery that you get. It's a practice that you do each day and you win your health. Okay, but now I'm going to back up a little bit though and get a little bit more practical and just look at this juxtaposition between physical adjustments, verbal adjustments, and props. Okay, and to me, the combination of the three is where the gold is. All right, so not the, you don't only want verbal adjustments, just like you don't only want physical adjustments. Okay, and this is tricky. Okay, so it takes a lot of practice and repetition to learn physical adjustments. Okay, and so many teachers, right, they learn by being in the MYSORE room 6 days a week with their students. Okay, and so again and again, they're giving the Marityasana C adjustment or the Kurmasana adjustment or whatever they are. Okay, and you can say that in some ways that most teachers of Ashtanga and students are behind in the verbal department. Okay, and so you have to be patient. And so I've written this book. It's called Teaching Yoga with Verbal Cues. And it's for both students and teachers. But it's a very excellent foundation it can give you. And it was based off the fact that I was terrified to teach yoga in the beginning, way back. And terrified to the point where I couldn't do it. And even for years afterwards, I used to get completely nervous every time I had to say the invocation. But I was stubborn. I stuck with it. But one of the things that I did is I made flashcards out of the most basic asana actions, like stamp your foot down in the triangle pose and externally rotate the femur in the hip socket, and elongating the spine in the triangle from the tail to the head and rotating the chest. So these very technical cues, I wrote them down on flashcards. And I am recommending this for students and teachers of Ashtanga, is to, even if you're not a teacher, you want to put the language to the actions that you are doing. And there's a beautiful kind of scouring process to me that happens, that because in some ways, like the mind, it works in pictures, okay? And so there's a visualization aspect to doing a pose. And there's been a lot of studies on athletes and things with visualization. And it's a pretty known fact that the better you can picture something, an action, a movement, then the more you're likely to be able to do it, okay? And I would say that the same goes for verbalizing, okay? So you'll really understand the leg actions, the arm actions, the spinal rotation actions of Marityasana C or D if you can verbalize those actions kind of limb by limb, instruction by instruction. Okay, then when you can do that, you understand that pose. And you understand how to practice it, and you understand how to teach it. And you better understand how to give a physical adjustment in that pose. So I have an app of the book, the Teaching Yoga with Verbal Cues, and it's designed as flashcards, the app. So you can you can see it and then try and then flip it, and there will be you can see how you did. And the app has the audio as well. I speak the instructions in the app. I give a more basic version and then a more complex version. So yeah, and this is, to me, like I said, that there's a kind of interesting alternating that you can do in your practice, like between not verbalizing, because it's amazing to me how, let me back up a little bit. So to me, that when you see in the MYSORE room, you see the silence on the walls, right? That, it seems, I feel kind of mean in a way, like criticizing that, except for this one point, okay? Because silence is, like I said, it is beautiful. It's, in some ways, it's the objective. Like, yes, a room full of yogis all doing their practice in silence, right? But the problem with that is that it assumes that all the yogis in the room have the knowledge that they need to be silent. You see, and this is where it breaks down, okay? Because when you look around, almost no one has the knowledge they need to be silent, okay? And so there has to be this language component that first, okay, and as a practitioner, you have the ability to control that, because to me, like I was just about to say, which is that I'm amazed at my body's own intelligence, right? When I'm just present and I'm not thinking in sentences, and watching my body organize itself and express a pose. It's extraordinary. And there's so much, so many things happening, so many activities happening that are, in a way, beyond the senses and beyond the mind, or beyond the ability of the senses or the mind to to articulate them, right? And you wouldn't even want to, right? Because that's part of the joy of it, is that it doesn't need language, right? And so, but at the same time, there's a joy in like dialoguing, in like actually having different parts of you having conversations, like, because so all these actions that are taking place within the body, they're happening in pairs of opposites, and I find it very engaging and fun to speak those actions, and whether it's out. Sometimes I even talk to myself, but I'm talking about internally, and then going back and forth between those modes, and having versatility and control in those different modes of kind of working on a pose. Even if the idea of really going far in articulating the yoga practice is new. I'm not sure it's new, but let's suppose it's new. I definitely find different ways of seeing that the past has also honored language. And so for one thing, I know Sarah is a big Hanuman fan, right? And so the group that's here with me, they're Sarah Hatcher's student, and so I'm showing this this statue of Hanuman. And one of the things I love about Hanuman is that he's known to be a master in diplomacy. Okay, like he's known as like, right, the strong monkey. He can fly across from India, the mainland of India, to the island of Lanka. And so, but he's not as known for his ability to be just diplomatic. You see, and to me, this is language. You have to be very nuanced and discerning and articulate and aware of finer points and differences between kind of potentially combative parties, right? So this is very important. So adjustments, they are, in a way, to me, they're the art of diplomacy. Whether you're doing a verbal, whether it's a verbal adjustment or a physical adjustment. Because, like we said, there's actions happen in pairs of opposites. So when you adjust somebody physically, you're going to show those pairs. Like, for instance, in, say, revolving triangle. One main pair of opposites is the legs stopping. So rooting the legs, and that fact of the legs rooting is what enables the spine to elongate and twist. Okay, and so if you don't have that pair of opposites, so if you don't have the legs really doing their job, then the spine can't get that length and that beautiful rotation along its length. And it's tricky though, okay, because pairs of opposites are opposites, okay, and opposites can fight, right? They conflict. They don't see things. They see things directly differently, right? And so there's an art to finding the middle ground that you're looking for. So you've got the kind of silent approach, the physical adjustments without verbal language, and kind of valuing silence. And then you've got the verbal, using language, talking, giving commands, and really communicating with your voice how to do the poses. Okay, and you could say that there's kind of, each has their benefits and each has their shadow. Okay, and this is why you want to use them in combination to each other. To me, this is the most powerful option. So it's not that you want either all silence or all verbal language, or all physical adjustments or all verbal adjustments. No, the combination is what makes it take off, and magic and empowerment and yogic growth happen. Okay, and so with Ashtanga and this sort of kind of there's a seriousness or a given to tapas aspect where and almost like a stoic silence where language is shunned and seen as distracting or egotistical. Okay, and so but there's a deep shadow to that, and Ashtanga has suffered from it, and so partly the lack of communication, it can lead to sexual abuse and physical abuse. Okay, and because a lot of times the silence it's easier to hide behind that silence and frankly to not show your lack of knowledge. Okay, and so it's in Ashtanga I feel that there's been many harmful adjustments that don't belong, basically, or they need a more nuanced conversation in order to be safe. Like, I'll just give you a couple of examples. One glaring example is this thing of having people walk in as far as they can in a back bend and then helping them to catch their ankles. Okay, and this happens without enough regard for the laws of mechanics of the body, for what should happen in the legs in a back bend, the internal rotation and groundedness of the legs, and then what's happening through the spinal column and ensuring that you get an even arch. Okay, and so to me, the verbal language is essential, and I will show you what I mean. So the verbal language is essential, and the responding to when you cannot do what the verbal language is saying. Okay, so and responding means either changing your adjustment, like or letting the kind of protocol for how to do a pose determine your physical adjustment, or help you to tell the student how to modify. Okay, so in Urdhva Dhanurasana, so this book is Teaching Yoga with Verbal Cues. That's my new book, and you can see the photo is showing the very nice leg actions where you've got the parallel thighs, you've got the knees lined up right over the ankles. Okay, but often you see the legs apart, especially when students are walking in and going beyond their limit. Okay, and so like, so it says, when you come up, subtly shift your weight into your legs and vertically line up your knees over your ankles. Okay, and then draw your knees towards each other and release your inner thighs down. So you're kind of getting this internal rotation move. And then subtly shift your weight towards your arms and work to vertically stack your shoulders, elbows, and wrists, okay, in a vertical line. Okay, and center your body equally between your hands and feet and your legs, the hands and feet and the legs and arms. I don't know, it's a hard conversation to have because it's so entrenched in Ashtanga to give these adjustments without verbalizing. without verbalizing what you're doing in the adjustment or verbalizing what should be happening in the body that's leading to the adjustment. Okay, and so what I'm talking about is like I'm being a heretic in a way. It's like I'm calling kind of bull on very standard practices of Ashtanga. And I'm doing it because my conscience tells me to, right? Is that this is wrong and this is harmful to students. Okay, and that's the reason I've written the book, and it's the reason I slant my teachings the way that I do, and I use modifications and props, is because I try to understand what the pose is asking for. What is this shape asking for from the body? And I want to put that into language. I want to talk about the actions of the legs, the actions of the arms, the pelvic position, and then the spines. Is the spine neutral? Is it a flexion? Is it a forward bend? Is it extension? And then if it's a back bend, if it's extension of the spine, then how are the legs and arms supposed to be positioned, and what's their rotation in the hip joints and the shoulder joints to support the extension of the spine or the flexion? Okay, and so it's absolutely essential. We get right down to the language of it, and then let our adjustments flow forth from there. And you get very dangerous proposition when you don't allow talking, and you decide that, like, the objective in a back bend, your last back bend in Ashtanga, is to catch your ankles. Okay, and no other variable matters. It's just when you get into that back bend, you try your darndest to walk your hands as close to your feet as possible, and then someone's going to even help you go further. Okay, and that's just one example. It happens all throughout Ashtanga, and it's a shadow. Okay, there's real danger and potential problem that could easily be fixed. See, the incorporating very precise language that where you articulate the posture itself, and then the physical adjustment, what it's trying to achieve, and you allow props because you have to take things in steps. Okay, so catching your ankles in a back bend is very possible for many people to do it in a healthy way. But to me, you have to go through a series of very clear steps in order to do it wholesomely. And it involves using the wall and using pads and slowly lowering yourself down so that you can maintain the integrity of your legs, the integrity of your pelvic position, the integrity of your spine and shoulders. So, and then you could say that there's a shadow side to the talking, which I sort of listed earlier just in passing, like that everyone, you can say that we like the sound of our own voice, right? That we just talk, and there's so much kind of externalization by talking, and in some ways, talking is theoretical, right? Whereas it's almost like the antithesis of experiencing and so talking about yoga is not doing yoga; it's not experiencing it. And so when the founder of Ashtanga says yoga is 99% practice and 1% theory, it sounds like he might say, don't talk about yoga, like only talk about it this much, and the rest you should be in there doing it and trying it. But and that is possible, that you can talk too much, and that ego can get involved in using your voice, and so there is a shadow to the talking, and in a certain way, what I said earlier is that in yoga we are headed towards silence. Okay, that talking is part of vritti. It's part of modifications of thought that are going on, and they're in your head and they're coming out. Okay, and you're trying to get to a state of no thought, and so there's no talking, no language, no breaking up the world into bits, but rather experiencing the world in a kind of trance-like state as an entirety. Okay, so no division between the subject and the object. But you have to understand that that state of samadhi, of the deep absorption, is like a passing state. That you go through, you go into that state, but then you come out, and you have to use language and props and breathing and all kinds of yoga techniques to kind of go back in there and come to this places of silence and stillness and leave language behind, only to come back to language again. And so it's very important right there in the asana to allow language to be there, verbal instruction. And then we've said further that it's a deeper thing too, that you're supposed to speak up and speak out, okay? And partly, it's not a good dynamic when the student who's trying to learn cannot speak and kind of verbalize what they feel. The relationship should not be set up that way, okay? And there's the possibility for harm there. And so need to be able to communicate how you're feeling in your posture, and then how you're feeling in other areas of your life that are equally valuable or more valuable, like your important relationships or work environment, right? So you've got to be able to speak out and stand up for yourself and know when something is not right and be able to address it, or know when something is right and follow it. Okay, and so it's a very important subject that it's very important for the asanas themselves, but the asanas are a microcosm that reflect a greater kind of theme of your whole life. Okay, and so I'm encouraging Ashtangis to embrace the verbal, to go with the physical. Okay, and you want silence, but you also want meaningful noise, meaningful language to alternate, and to those two coming together to build an experience of yoga. So thank you for joining me for this installment of the Asana Kitchen podcast. So remember, I have my upcoming course, new book, a new app. You can find out about all of those on my website.